Hello guys, this is your friend and we are back with a new fanfic. Which is what if the fourth great Shinobi War went completely off script, and changed the Shinobi world forever? Part 2. And if you enjoy this fanfic then please press the like button and subscribe to my channel for more fanfic like this. And now let's start the fanfic. After gathering the materials he thought would be necessary to help train Kagaya to be a proficient ninja instead of a brawler like he used to be. Though he was still very apprehensive about this, as he still had no absolute confirmation that Kagaya wouldn't eventually turn on them and betray him. So if this was the case, he was making her a much more lethal opponent, when they had barely survived the original encounter. Though there was a benefit if she decided to double-cross them this time. She was now human and was just as susceptible to exhaustion as he was. Though he was well aware that her chakra reserves vastly dwarfed even his titanic chakra reserves. So a war of attrition was still a very weighted in Kagaya's favor, though she no longer had actually limitless chakra being alive again. Though he put these thoughts to the side as he stood in the middle of the training ground with his current sensei Tony standing across from him. Well, we'll keep an eye on her for now until I feel she is no longer a threat, but from what the old man told us, when she wasn't insane, she was quite caring and loving, so if she did indeed return to being sane. Along with we removed the control that Madara had on her when he was used as a vessel. Then I shouldn't have to worry, but for some reason I get a feeling I shouldn't relax. Naruto thought to himself as he walked over to his sensei who had picked up a stick and started drawing pictures in the dirt. Tony knew there was still a language barrier between the two of him, but he figured drawing was a fast way to bridge that gap. They would be able to learn bits and pieces of each other's language in the process along with him getting his point across. So he drew a crude elephant with an arrow pointing to its nose into the dirt and drew a little stick figure of the stance he was trying to teach him, drawing an equal sign between them. After he was done this he stood in the stance he drew, his elbow skyward with his arm perpendicular to the ground. After he thought Naruto had the basics of the stance, he assumed a defensive stance, motioning for Naruto to attack him so he could show him how to properly use it. Naruto raised a curious eyebrow at this motion for him to attack him. He had restricted himself using training seals, so he wouldn't hurt his sensei. He knew that he probably could take a fair amount of damage. Though when you could crack a small mountain in half with your attacks, there weren't many people who could tank an attack like that. Though he obliged his sensei, throwing a quick jab at Tony's chest. Much to his surprise, Tony quickly rotated the top of his torso so his elbow quickly came to block the attack, causing a light stinging sensation in his fist, as hitting the elbow was a painful blow to land. He was surprised how effective the block was compared to a normal block. Not only did it allow his entire torso to absorb the blow, it also made an effective retaliation method without him having to drop his defense. Tony smirked at the amazed look Naruto had on his face, along with him shaking his fist, as he knew Naruto wouldn't be expecting it to hurt him for his attack to be blocked. Though Tony threw a quick jab of his own at Naruto, expecting him to be more than capable of countering such an attack from his normal human speed. His suspicions were confirmed when Naruto effortlessly blocked the attack, though it was with his normal toad-style block, causing Tony to shake his head disapprovingly and say, "Wrong," in Thai before showing him how to do the stance again. Then fluidly he switched into an attack again to not give Naruto a moment to forget what he was taught that quickly, along with reinforcing in Naruto that an enemy wouldn't let him rest. Naruto growled a bit softly in annoyance, as he was still not one to like training in something new, and not being able to quickly pick it up. So his eyes widened a bit in surprise as he wasn't expecting such a quick attack. Though he adopted the new form of blocking, cringing a little at how he expected it to hurt. Given how close it was to his funny bone, and the fact his elbow didn't get much abuse. Though he was surprised when it was a negligible level of pain, so he donned a smirk. As the toad-style block was effective at blocking and redirecting the enemy's attack potency, but this block was defensive and offensive at the same time. That was an awesome block. Naruto exclaimed lightly, silently thinking, oh crap, to himself as Tony went on the offensive, only throwing jabs and punches at Naruto. Tony usually had a more relaxed type of training style, though that was for others much less proficient with fighting than Naruto. So he surmised that Naruto would easily be able to learn from a more aggressive teaching style. So as he went on the offensive, his thoughts were indeed correct as Naruto quickly began using the block to block his punches. Though he had another idea. He had remembered seeing Naruto create an exact version of himself to do his paperwork before they came to the training field. So he quickly disengaged, stepping back a few feet, mimicking Naruto's signature jutsu and nodded at Naruto as if asking him to do it. Naruto was curious as to why wanted him to create some shadow clones, as he was sure Tony couldn't have been possibly aware of the ability to get the memories of clones. Though he shrugged lightly and obliged him, creating about 19 clones, which was the lowest amount he could make given his level of chakra control. Inwardly smirking at Tony's wide eyes at him summoning so many clones. Though he his head to the side curiously as to what his sensei wanted to do with the clones. Ah, I see, he wants me to be able to see from a third-person perspective of how it's properly done. He surmised as he motioned for the clone to attack him and began blocking the attacks with expert precision. Tony smiled softly as he saw Naruto paying rapt attention to the light spar with his clone, though he snapped out a quick side kick who was still expecting Tony to be on the defensive. Quickly dispelling the clone, he looked over to Naruto as he began drawing a couple other diagrams of a couple attacks he wanted to teach Naruto, creating his lesson plan for the day. On the other side of the same training field, Kagaya was sitting Caesar style, sitting against the 3 logs that were embedded in Team 7's training grounds. With the book on the Aikido style of martial arts in her hand, she was surprised that a style from her time period hadn't been lost like Muay Thai had been. Though she was quite pleased with Naruto's choice for her. She wasn't much of a fighter in general, as before she became insane due to the Shinju tree. She was a peaceful person, albeit a peace through force stance. Though given she came from a time that didn't understand the merits of diplomacy. It was kind of expected that it was a kill or be killed mentality, though now in a more peaceful time compared to when she was originally alive, she would be more peaceful. Quite an excellent choice, I can still defend you while also not seriously injuring my opponent. She thought to herself as she put the book down, forming the all too familiar hand seal to create a group of 19 shadow clones. The clones looked at her a bit confused, as she had never created them before, so their existence was surprising to them. Though they already knew what she meant to do with them, grouped up in groups of 2, a clone standing across from the original. Going through the katas that they had seen in the book with each other, every time half the clones would disperse. The clones created their own sparring partners. As they may not have as massive chakra reserves as the original, but they still had enough to make the 5 cage, even Naruto jealous. Kagaya was going through the motions of the kata when suddenly her clones all stopped what they were doing and faced her. Raising a curious eyebrow as to what they were doing, as she hadn't told them to do anything else except for train. Then the clones started leaking killer intent into the training field, which caught Kagaya off guard, as she wasn't expecting to get a taste of her own killing intent. She tried giving mental orders to the clone as she had seen Naruto do before, though they didn't seem to care. Causing her jaw to clench lightly, as she was unsure of what was about to happen. Though she had an idea given how they were leaking killing intent, they were going to attack her. Her suspicions were confirmed as one jumped at her. As they got to her, she used the move she had been just training in. Chopping the offending appendage before it could make contact with her, putting her hand under the chin of the clone. Shoving it back harshly into the other clone, causing both clones to disperse instantly. The clones cracked their knuckles on their hands and cracked their necks. They figured the one clone attack would do literally nothing to their original. So silently looking at each other, a few moments later they gained the crazed look on their face akin to what she had back during the war. Without giving any notice to their attack, they all rushed at her, some of the clones jumping into the air, creating a dome of clones that began encroaching on her. Kagaya sighed softly, closing her eyes as she stood in the middle of the clones. Quickly a truth-seeking orb began to form out of her hand, wrapping around her. Right before they were going to land on her, it finished forming. Not giving the clones a chance to retreat, continuous dispersal noises were heard throughout the training field. Letting out a long breath through her pursed lips as her eyes opened, revealing a hardened look on her face as she contemplated why the clones would suddenly attack her even though she didn't give them the order to. As she contemplated the motive behind the attack, a sudden pain went through her head, forcing her down to one knee, causing her to let out a pained scream as she clutched her head from the pain. Her face twitched from a pained expression to crazed quickly. Back with Naruto and company. Naruto was in the middle of training with one of his clones, only to be knocked off balance a bit along with the other residents of the training field by the sudden wave of killing intent, causing all of their heads to snap in the direction of the killing intent. Seeing Kagaya surrounded by all her clones that were now facing her. That's weird. Clones shouldn't have a complete mind of their own, much less the ability to have killing intent for their maker. Naruto mused to himself as he surmised it couldn't have been from Kagaya herself, as the killing came from a donut shape according to his negative emotion senses. Then the clones leapt into action, causing Naruto's eyes to widen as he donned his Biju cloak, ready to dash into the fray and try to save her. Though just as fast the clones had attacked, they had even faster been dispersed by the original, causing him to relax a little as now she was safe. Tony, being just a normal human, was forced to his knees as the killing intent became too much for him. Gritting his teeth, he was a strong-willed man who had never run from a fight before, but every nerve and atom in his body was screaming at him to get away from Kagaya. So he sighed in relief as the wave of killing intent dispersed and he could breathe normally again. Dusting off his knees as he stood on his own 2 feet again with a grimace on his face. What kind of inhuman killing intent was that? He mused to himself curiously, though his musings was quickly broken as he was forced to be flat against the ground, as a pained scream echoed across the field, followed by a much more intense wave of killing intent over them. Feeling an actual elephant was sitting on his back right now, forcing him to be unable to move. Even Naruto was forced down to one knee from the intense level of the killing intent that had washed over from him from Kagaya. Fighting back to standing again, donning his Biju mode cloak again to quickly make it to Kagaya. Kagaya was on top of him, forcing Naruto down onto his back as right above her head was a bone spear aimed like she was trying to impale Naruto. Oh shit, she was actually just faking. Sasuke, get here fast. Naruto thought to himself as he was sure that Sasuke had not left yet. Only him and Sasuke had a fraction of a chance to win. Right as his thoughts finished, a crazed Kagaya brought the spear down at lightning speeds. Naruto's Biju cloak formed chakra arms to block the spear, as he knew if he touched the spear directly, his body would start becoming stone from touching it. Kagaya gained a slightly annoyed look on her face as Naruto blocked her attack as she began to bear down on the bone spear, trying to impale Naruto. Though a surprised look came across her face as she was peeled off of Naruto by his clones, forcing her arms behind her back, it taking several clones to hold her arms behind her back, forcing her down onto her face as they held a knee into her back from several clones to restrain her. Get off of me, you abominations to the purity of chakra, she screamed in a crazed tone as she struggled against the grip of the clones who were pinning her down. She was crazy strong, but with no way to gain any distance to force her way out of the grip, she was effectively pinned down by them. Naruto sighed softly as he kept up his Biju cloak just in case she had managed to get out of the clone's grip, crouching down so Kagaya didn't have to look up as much at him. I was really hoping this time would be different. Though I suppose that I should have expected this eventually. I just didn't think it would be this quick. Though I did enjoy our time together before this. Naruto trailed off a bit sadly as he took out a kunai from his pouch on his belt and spun it in his finger before gripping it in a downward grip with both hands. As he steeled himself, he quickly brought it down towards Kagaya's head in order for him to not lose his resolve. Kagaya watched in slow motion as the kunai made its way to her. Inwardly she was screaming in a crazed tone. No, 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 no. It can't end like this. I need to reclaim all the cha. Is all she could think before everything went to black as she slumped over. In Kagaya's mindscape, Kagaya drowsily sat up with a groan and realized she was no longer in the training field, but somewhere much different. Though it felt familiar to her, though she couldn't quite place it, it felt quite comfortable to her. Almost like home, unlike the place she had on Earth, which was just a place to rest her head while she tried to bring peace to humans. Though as she looked around, the area around her looked unfamiliar to her. She felt at peace for some odd reason. Okay, what the hell am I doing here? She asked curiously, to no one in general as she looked around at the barren landscape around her. As she panned around, it revealed a white as her pale skin landscape, that looked like it was once lush with vegetation and foliage, but now she was surrounded by decay. The pale trees around her had long since lost their foliage and stood there barren. As she did a full 360, she saw a mirror image of herself. Though this copycat just felt wrong to her, an insane look on her face, as black as night raven hair. Hello Kagaya, it's nice of you to finally join me, instead of avoiding me after all these centuries. The copycat said with slightly warped and cracking tone as she spoke, causing Kagaya's hair to stand on edge. Kagaya found herself stuck in place with a morbid curiosity as to what the doppelganger meant about her avoiding her for all this time. So instead of running or fighting this copycat, she decided to be indifferent for the time being, so long as the copy did. What do you mean? I see you look like me, but you can't be me. You just feel so wrong, warped, and cold, also. Where are we? She asked curiously as she panned her vision around once again in a full 360. The dark version's eyebrow twitched a little in annoyance at being dismissed so easily, but she kept her composure and sighed softly, garnering Kagaya's full attention again. You know, not too long ago, we were the same, you and I. Though through sheer force of will, you removed me from your psyche, causing me to become an what is the words those pitiful humans use? She mused softly and thought for a moment or two. Insane version of yourself, though I do not like that word. I am a different version of you, all the same memories, skills, and feelings you have. I just don't care for any of them. The only thing I care for is to retrieve all the chakra stolen from me. She monologues as she sits down, motioning for Kagaya to do the same. Kagaya warily does, but sits sees a style. Not only was it her preferred sitting style, but it was a tactical advantage if she needed to get to her feet quickly. Why do I not remember you at all then? All I remember is being sealed into the moon, and then nothing but blackness until I was revived by that damned Uchiha my son manipulated. She mused, spitting out that last part as she was referring to the abomination that was a black Zetsu. As Kagaya spat out the word, son, her eyes closed, causing her to miss the Dark One's eyes narrowing for a split second at her. Though right as Kagaya's gaze returned to her, she returned to her normal stoic but slightly crazed demeanor before she began to speak again. As to your first question, we are on our home world of Nazareth too. It doesn't surprise me that you don't remember our homeworld, as it has been a very long time since we were here last, along with the fact you suppressed any memory of having to do with our clan or world. She stated in an as a matter-of-factly tone, with slight annoyance at this laced in her voice as she spoke. Kagaya narrowed her eyes lightly as she tried to search her memories for any inkling she was telling the truth, and found she ran into some kind of mental barrier, where she had supposedly sealed off the memories. So at least she wasn't lying about that. Kagaya mused to herself as she kept her eyes on the copycat, staying silent as the copy's cue to keep talking monologuing. The copycat raised a curious eyebrow to Kagaya, as she had been surprisingly silent during most of their conversations, only speaking when it was necessary. Our clan heard of your defeat, and shall be here within the next couple centuries, she said with a smirk, her crazed grin getting a little wider as Kagaya's eyes widened a bit at this revelation. I have your attention now, huh? Yes, even if you don't let me retrieve the chakra from this horrendous planet, it will be taken when you're unable to defend it against people who are as strong as you combined, she said with a smirk. Kagaya wasn't anyone to scoff at, as she was the matriarch of their clan for a reason, so the copycat decided to keep her on her toes with this statement. Kagaya didn't remember anything about her other clan members, though she had the feeling, this was not good at all. So she tensed up lightly at this revelation as she began examining her other half, for any trace she was lying or trying to get a rise out of her. She couldn't find any evidence she was lying but was sure was trying to get her upset. Well, I shall defend this planet with my dying breath, as I have finally achieved the peace that I so desperately fought for. So tell them to bring it, and if you interfere, I will kill you too. She threatened her dark half with conviction in her eyes as she spoke. The dark half chuckled a little and stood up with a crazed smirk on her face as she began to fade into the background, her voice becoming disembodied. Very well, it seems our time is up here. You might want to get back out there before your mate actually kills you, she said as her voice faded like her ethereal form had faded from Kagaya's mindscape. Kagaya's eyes widened as she remembered what was happening before she ended up in this desolate place. Oh crap, how do I get out of here? Come on, think, as she didn't know where she was exactly, so she couldn't just open a portal back to the field. Though little did she know, this was actually what she needed to do as the environment around her faded to white. Back with Naruto and company. Naruto was about an inch away from Kagaya's head as he felt no more negative emotions from Kagaya, causing him to hesitate, stopping just short of the kill shot. In the real world, all of a second had passed, but in Kagaya's mindscape, they had been conversing for the better part of 30 minutes, though no one else knew of the inner battle of wills that just took place. Kagaya slowly turned her head to half look up at Naruto, as she was still pinned down to the floor. So looking at Naruto sideways was the best she could do at the moment, though she could tell that everyone was tense at the moment, so she decided to break the tension. Naruto, I like it rough as much as the next girl, but wait until we get back to the bedroom, she mused with a soft blush on her face, which was further exacerbated by her fair skin as she spoke. This caused Naruto to blush a deep crimson red as he tried to steel himself to drive the kunai into her, as he wasn't sure if this was another ploy to stall for time or something, or if the Kagaya he had come to know was back. This isn't the time for jokes, Kagaya. I nearly killed you, now are you going to tell me what the hell is going on before I regain my resolve? He spoke in a bit of a harsh tone, but his adrenaline was still pumping through his veins, as he would gladly put his village before someone he didn't have any romantic feelings for yet. Kagaya's sweat dropped at this, using the relaxation of the clones from her killing intent going away to power her way back to a sitting position, televising her movements in slightly exaggerated ways to Naruto to prove she was a non-combatant at the moment, allowing the clones to keep their grip on her arms to cement home this. It seems I was only partially correct in my assumption that my insanity had left, she trailed with a sweat drop as she began to recant what happened in her mind a few moments ago to Naruto and his clones. So yeah, seems I'm partial yandere, I think is what it's called, she mused curiously, causing her mate to sweat drop yet again at her antics but relaxed a bit, though still remaining a bit on edge. Naruto searched her face for a few long moments to check for any sign of deceit in her face, though he could find none, twirling his kunai a couple times before depositing it back into his pouch. Well, I'm glad that's over. I felt like I was about to have a heart attack from how fast my heart was racing, Naruto mused to himself as he helped Kagaya back to standing before he spoke again. Well, either way, I'm just glad that's over, he said as he motioned for his clones to disperse, After all the excitement, Naruto felt almost as exhausted as he did for a full day of training. So he just wanted to get home and take a hot shower and go to sleep right now. Kagaya saw the exhaustion take over Naruto as he relaxed fully and felt bad that this probably wasn't going to be the only time that they'd have to worry about this kind of thing. Though she would do her damnedest to keep it from happening and stressing him out more. "Yeah, let's go home, Naruto-kun," she said softly as she dusted herself off, gently taking his hand, and inwardly becoming a little sad as he flinched at her touch, though she couldn't blame him. As he relaxed at her touch, she opened a portal in front of them to their house and stepped through. Naruto relaxed a little more as they entered their home, shrugging off his weighted armor jacket onto the couch with a heavy thud. Flopping down onto the couch with a sigh, he placed his face into his left hand as it was propped up on the arm of the couch. Today has definitely been an interesting day to say the least. Naruto mused to himself. He was caught up his own thoughts, so he didn't see Kagaya glide over to him quite literally and sat in his lap. Kagaya had a concerned look on her face as she gently floated down into his lap. Only when her weight registered in his lap did he return his attention to her. Gently cupping his face as she leaned in and gave Naruto a soft but quick kiss. "I know things will be a bit tough now, given the situation with my mental state. Though I swear to you, Naruto, you won't have to worry much about it. I have a strong will, so she will not get out without a fight. If you see me struggling to remain in control, knock me out, okay?" she asked softly, stroking his cheek with her thumb as he nodded in her gentle grip, causing Kagaya's concerned look to soften into her normal stoic one. Naruto sighed softly as he looked at Kagaya for a few long moments with an unreadable expression, causing Kagaya to blush softly at all the attention she was suddenly getting from Naruto. "Kagaya, promise me one thing?" he asked curiously with a hint of seriousness to his voice as he spoke, causing Kagaya to angle her head to the side curiously at his sudden request for her to promise him something. "If you feel yourself going fully crazy again, give me and Naruto the seals again. We will make sure to keep you from being able to ruin the peace you had wished for that way," he stated, his tone heavy with the burden they would both carry should the time come for them to honor that promise that he was making her carry. Kagaya simply nodded at this statement, not trusting herself to speak. She could tell that he was putting a lot of his trust in her as he asked that of her. Though she couldn't help but feel a little sad that it may come to that. She made a mental note to look for a way for her to entirely be rid of the darker side of herself as she let out a cute yawn, snuggling closer to Naruto. "I'm sleepy, Naruto, can we sleep here? I don't wanna move, I'm comfy," she said with a cute tiredness to her voice as she spoke, causing Naruto to chuckle silently and nod as he yawned too. Naruto picked Kagaya up princess style. He knew in 2 moments Kagaya could get them home, but he felt the urge to princess style carry her back to the house. A flash of golden appeared around Naruto as he activated KCM mode, flashing through the trees and across the rooftops like it was nothing until he reached their home. Opening the door, he sat down on the couch with Kagaya in his lap. Her head cradled against his chest, she was still awake but fading fast. Naruto formed his signature jutsu seals. A set of clones popping into existence began to quietly clean the house and bring the couple a blanket. Before stepping outside with a smile on their faces, one going to take Tony home and dispelling themselves as to not disturb the now fast asleep new couple. Naruto normally never dreamt, much less had a nightmare, though tonight his dreams were filled with nightmares. They kept repeating one theme: everything as far as the eye could see was desolate and lifeless, with the bodies of his friends and loved ones stretched out in front of him, as if on display for him and any others to see. "What the heck?" Naruto exclaimed out in his dream. Then a moment later, he felt a powerful killing intent behind him, though the killing intent seemed familiar. It was also different, deeply cold and a bit crazed if Naruto had to put a name to it. Though he didn't have much time to think as the killing intent intensified, forcing him to his knees and making it hard for Naruto to breathe. The creator of the killing intent floated around to be in front of Naruto, just from the slow way they came around. You knew that they relished seeing Naruto being forced into the kneeling position. See. Is this not simpler? Is this not your rightful place? 2. The voice boomed out, sounding so familiar yet distorted my rage and insanity that it was almost unrecognizable. The origin of the voice bent down and cupped Naruto's chin, forcing him to look up at them. Look upon the pain that you have wrought. You should have left me sealed up, you brought this upon yourself. The now discerned voice of the insane Kagaya exclaimed, all but screaming at him, but a twisted smirk crossed her face. Don't worry, you'll get to join them. As soon as you provide me one. Tiny little thing. She sneered at Naruto. Her insane side hated all humans, but she rubbed her belly to punctuate her point. Naruto's eyes widened in horror as even someone as dense as him could figure out what she meant by that motion. It was only horror due to the fact he hadn't thought about that before. Was his Kagaya only pretending to not be hopelessly insane to get probably the most powerful child the realms had ever seen out of him? Tell me honestly, is this what the other you wants? He asked, completely forgetting this was his own dream, so any information gained from asking questions to another person in his dreams should be taken with a grain of salt. As it was essentially him talking to himself in the form of a nightmare. Kagaya 3 could only shrug her shoulders as this information, regardless if it was the real insane Kagaya or the nightmare version, didn't have the information to give him. I honestly couldn't tell you, as I don't know myself. Though I can tell you one thing, that her and I are nothing alike. Do not let how you view me skew how you treat her. Because her being me is the only thing I care even a little about. If you hurt her, you will be the second person I kill. Right after I kill that little pink teammate of yours. I still haven't gotten her back for hitting me with a mountain on the back of my head. Kagaya said angrily as she floated closer to Naruto, slowly humming a soft song that a mother would sing to a child. Though this song was discordant, it sounded very broken and haunted in Naruto's opinion. Back in the waking world, Naruto woke with a start, in a deep and fast breath as his heart rate was elevated. His senses were dialed up to 11 right now. Oh, thank Kami, that was just a nightmare. He trailed off to himself as he looked down at the now wide-awake Kagaya. She had been startled awake when his chest that she had been using as a pillow suddenly filled with air and nearly knocked her off of her comfy spot, wrapped up in a blanket with him. Kagaya, hey, did I wake you? Sorry, I had a nightmare. He said honestly, though if she asked, Naruto didn't think he had the heart to tell her about it right now since she was in it. Kagaya's soft and supple white eyes flickered back and forth, searching Naruto's face, trying to discern what the nightmare was about without asking about it. Want to talk about it? She asked in a soft, concerned voice, her right hand going up and cupping his left cheek, stroking it softly with her thumb as she smiled softly, planting a soft kiss on his lips. Feeling her heart flutter a little at the kiss, her smile widened a bit. Yes, she was aware they had originally married as a way for Naruto to placate her when he thought she was still evil. While originally she had only been doing it for her own selfish means as well. I mean, she had been sealed for 1,000 years, so it was about time to play the field again. Though she could legitimately feel herself growing affection for him with each passing moment. Naruto's eyes searched her face, calmer than he was before, though he was looking for any hint of insanity in her eyes. Though his eyes widened a little when he saw something he didn't expect in her eyes. He saw the beginnings of love forming in her eyes. The way the edges of her eyes softened from their concern. Though she didn't have pupils in the conventional sense, them being a different color than the iris. He could see the muscles contract in her eyes, signaling her pupils were dilated. Which was a sure physiological sign someone had true feelings for you. No, it was just a stupid nightmare. I'm sorry for waking you, Kagaya. He trailed with a tired sigh, though he knew he wouldn't be going back to sleep for a while, rubbing his face slightly in frustration at this fact. Kagaya saw the look and action of frustration on his face and got her own foxish grin as she came up with a devious plan. "Don't think you'll be able to go back to sleep, darling?" she asked in a soft, sweet, but still a hint of deviousness to her tone. Giggling lightly as Naruto raised a curious eyebrow. Placing her finger on his lips, she leaned down to his right ear and sultrily whispered, "Let me help with that." She trailed off as she nipped at his right earlobe, letting out a soft but throaty moan into his ear, loving the feeling of the pleasant shiver it gave him. She loved making him squirm with all the pleasant things she did. Naruto bit his lip lightly. Just from those few actions she had done, he had all but forgotten about the nightmare he just had. "What sort of cute deviousness are you up to, Kagaya?" he asked curiously, causing the woman in question to giggle more and shrug. Craning his neck so she could get better access to it, letting out a soft pleased moan as she began to kiss along his neck. Whatever it was she planned, Naruto was down for it. Reaching for Kagaya's sides, he began to stroke her sides sensually only for his hands to be pinned down. Kagaya leaned back and looked Naruto in the eyes, putting up one finger, wagging her finger back and forth, as if chiding him. You just sit back," she said in a sultry tone as she leaned back down, planting a sensual kiss along his neck. "And let me," she trailed again, a bit throatier than before as she planted another kiss on his neck. "Do all the work," she said finally as she nipped at the sensitive skin around his collarbone. Pursing her lips, she pressed it against his skin and left a hickey on his collar. Naruto let out a pleasant sound every time Kagaya's lips pressed against his neck, biting his bottom lip softly as Kagaya left a hickey. Though she had told him to let her do all the work, he was having a hard time resisting the urge to flip her over and return her kindness. "Kagaya," he throatily moaned out, sitting up as Kagaya began to take off his shirt, their eyes meeting as he looked up. Their eyes burning with a bit of passion, signaling things were really about to heat up. Not wasting another moment, Naruto stole Kagaya's lips in a passionate, deep kiss. Naruto was a dominant man, so he wrapped his arms around her and pulled her close, leaving no space between their bodies as their kiss heated up. Kagaya let out a pleased mewl as he pulled her closer. She loved a territorial man, as it proved to the submissive side of her that she was his. Breaking the kiss deadlock for a moment, Kagaya nipped at his bottom lip, gently tugging on it as she did. Feeling the immediate reaction it got from Naruto, she smirked lightly. Though this was only the beginning, she began by kissing the side of his mouth, trailing down his chin until she got to the tip of his chin. Then she started kissing along his throat, down his muscular chest, which Kagaya was very pleased with. She continued kissing down to his navel before she stopped and looked up at Naruto. "Close your eyes," she said in a seductive tone to her voice. Once Naruto did, there was a moment of silence while Kagaya tied up her hair, making a mental note to go to the barber's and get some of the extreme length cut off. Naruto was curious as to what she was planning, but he had an idea since there was a pause before Kagaya started pulling his pants off. "Oh God, why does having my eyes closed make it so much hotter?" he thought to himself, picking up both of his feet so Kagaya could take off his pants and underwear completely. His suspicions were confirmed when he felt the warm, wet sensation of Kagaya's mouth wrapping around the tip of his. Letting out a soft but throaty moan, he leaned his head back onto the couch as he sat back, and relaxed, letting Kagaya work her magic on his. Kagaya smirked internally as she listened to the lovely sounds she was causing Naruto to make. Slowly she began to take more of him into her mouth, though she was thankful for her race not having a uvula, hence no gag reflex, and could thrive in space so she didn't need air. Which was a blessing in her opinion, because Naruto had a pretty sizable. She was undeterred though, she promised she would make him feel good. As these thoughts were ruminating in her head, she began a steady bobbing pace, spurred on by the lovely sounds that were coming out of Naruto's mouth as she serviced him. Naruto bit his bottom lip as the pleasure was feeling great for him, though he was done with inaction. In a quick motion, He picked up Kagaya and laid them both down on the couch, never taking his out of her mouth. Smirking at the surprised giggle that Kagaya let out at his sudden change of position. He spun her around to where her crotch was level with his face, pulling her panties off and tossing them to the side. He took a moment to marvel at how perfect her was shaped before digging into his meal. As he did, he inwardly smirked as he felt Kagaya moaning around his as he began lapping up her juices. Kagaya was surprised at just how strong he was able to move her around like she weighed absolutely nothing. Though this was great in her opinion, as it proved to her that Naruto could handle her in the ways she wanted. Oh God, I was just going to make him come so we could go back to sleep, but I will never say no to this. She thought to herself as she picked up the pace of her bobbing, redoubling her efforts to make him come first. Naruto was on the same wavelength of making his partner come first, so it became a sort of unspoken race between the two to make them come fastest. Though Naruto let out a loud moan as she buried his all the way down into her throat. His toes curled a little as he didn't even know that was humanly possible. Then again, she isn't human, so that may be easy. He trailed off as Kagaya began gulping while he was buried in her throat, simulating a vagina undulating around his member, causing his toes to curl in pleasure as he moaned. Kagaya smirked as she saw his toes curl at what she was doing. She was going to spoil him in ways that only she could. Though she slid him out of her mouth for a moment to speak with him. Throwing her hair over her shoulder, she looked back with a smirk. So quick little tip, my race doesn't need to breathe for a long time, so let's just say. Have fun, she said with a giggle before she slid his back down her throat, curious if he got the hint. Naruto's eyes widened a little bit as his horny clouded brain tried to parse what she meant by that. Then he realized what she meant. He began lightly thrusting his hips upwards as Kagaya stayed where she was, still gulping to provide even more pleasure for him. Oh God, Kagaya, he moaned out as he began to pick up the pace of eating his meal, taking 2 fingers and sliding them in and out of her to try and make her come first. Kagaya moaned louder as she felt his fingers sliding into her, bucking her hips into his hand and mouth as she writhed in pleasure. She could feel her orgasm building a lot faster than she anticipated. Though she could tell Naruto wasn't faring much better if the heavy breathing and reactions his was having were any indicator. Gotta think of something fast, or I may very well lose, she thought to herself before an idea came to her. Sliding her hand down, she gently began to rub his balls, loving the sounds that came from her lover. Naruto bit his bottom lip for a moment at her actions. He could feel his balls swelling up like they always do not too long before he comes. Though he willed himself to last longer as he picked up the pace of his ministrations on Kagaya, listening to her moans to figure out what worked best on her. Hey Kurama, got any ideas on how to win this? He internally mused. Kurama let out a big yawn as he cracked open a huge slitted eye as he peeked through Naruto's eyes to see what was going on. Though as he did, even the millennia-old fox couldn't do anything but blush. You humans and your mating rituals. Send some wind chakra to your tongue to cause it to vibrate. Make sure to not add too much or you will end up hurting your mate. Kurama said sagely as he went back to sleep. Naruto smirked inwardly at Kurama's advice. He did exactly as he was told, eliciting a loud and pleasurable moan from Kagaya. He could tell she was close by the way she was now grinding on his face, though this didn't stop him. Picking up the pace to max, he could feel his orgasm probably wouldn't be too long after hers. Then she came and came hard, essentially vice gripping his fingers in place as she rode out her orgasm. Kagaya was distracted from what she was doing by the powerful orgasm Naruto had just given her. Though after she started coming down, she picked up where she left off. Thankfully she didn't have to do much, as Naruto was still thrusting the entire time. She felt him grow bigger in her mouth. Knowing this was it, she buried him all the way down again with her nose flush against his balls. She coaxed all she could out of them. Once Naruto's stopped twitching, she slowly slid her mouth off his, out all she could. Fuck Naruto, that was amazing. Feeling better now? She asked half dreamily, half sleepily, though she let out a pleasant surprised yelp as Naruto gently rolled her over and picked her up princess style, carrying her to the bedroom. Naruto had his signature foxish grin on, an albeit sleepy one, but he nodded at her question as he gently lay her on her side of the bed. Much better, and I think I can actually get back to sleep now, he admitted honestly as he stripped her shirt off of her, climbing into the bed and laying flat on the bed. After he did, Kagaya pushed his arm up and laid her head on his chest, her bare body flush against his with a smile on both of their faces. They drifted off. The next morning, Kagaya was the first to wake up as a beam of light hit her face, causing her to stir and make a sound of mild annoyance at the fact she was being woken up while she was warm and comfy. That was a very restful sleep, but I don't want to leave Naruto's warm embrace, she mused to herself honestly, then her stomach growled lightly, which was her signal to get her butt up. Sighing softly, Kagaya peeled herself from his embrace, heading to the kitchen to make them both some breakfast, humming softly as she noticed that she was only in one of Naruto's shirts. So she opened a portal to the other side of the room in order to get to the window and close it as his shirt was just barely covering her butt. Though she decided to cook okonomiyaki for the two of them. I hope Naruto likes this, it's been a long while since I've made these, she thought to herself, deciding to make Naruto breakfast in bed since he had been training so hard recently. She began humming a tune as she cooked. She had long since stopped floating, though it looked like she was floating around the kitchen with how she glided effortlessly throughout. Once it was finished, she set up 2 plates on a tray, some orange juice and headed back to the room. Dana, 3, breakfast is ready, she said softly as she used her butt to push the door open and not risk dropping it. Naruto groaned lightly at someone calling out to him to wake him up. It took his brain a few seconds to process that it was Kagaya, though it registered in his mind that she had called him Dana. So he sat up groggily and smelled the delicious food and his stomach growled at the prospect of a home-cooked meal. Thank you Kagaya-chan, it looks delicious, he said with a low rumble to his voice as he had just woken up. As Kagaya sat down, he leaned over and planted a soft but affectionate kiss on her lips, smiling in the middle of the kiss. He felt his heart skip a beat as he kissed her. A spark had traveled down his spine as well, his eyebrows furrowed as he contemplated what this could mean. As much as he claimed he loved Sakura when he was younger, he didn't truly know what it meant. He had just latched onto the first person to show him any kind of kindness that he didn't see as a parental figure. Though after a fair bit of contemplation he finally figured out what it meant. I think I am falling for you Kagaya, he admitted honestly, looking her in the eyes as he did. Kagaya's eyes widened a considerable margin when he said that she had been thinking about the fact that she basically held his head down with a shotgun and made him marry her. Which is why she was trying to make this as pleasant of an experience as possible, though she had started to develop a bit of feelings for him too. She never thought he would return them. I'm ecstatic to hear that Naruto, I've been slowly falling for you for a while, ever since you actually started treating me like I wasn't just an enemy alien, she said honestly, smiling as she did. The smile even reached her eyes as they beamed the affection she had for the knuckle-headed ninja that had suddenly found his way into her heart. She could tell at first that he was just faking it, hoping she didn't snap. She could tell from the tone of his voice and how his eyes were locked with hers at the moment, it was the truth. Naruto was a bit surprised by this. He figured it was a strong possibility that she would fall for him as he seemed to have an inexplicable charm with the ladies he couldn't quite understand. He honestly wished he could control it at several points, though he had the most powerful woman in existence as his wife. So he wasn't going to complain about her truly developing feelings for him, plus she was a lot of fun in the bedroom. Thank you Kagaya-chan. He trailed softly. Kagaya furrowed her eyebrows lightly in confusion as to what he was thanking her for. Thank you for being truly here for and fully present in our marriage. Yes, it may have all been an act at first, but I have come to appreciate your company, Kagaya-chan. He said honestly as he took her hand in his and gave it a gentle yet affectionate squeeze before he took a bite of his food and let out a pleased sound. Kagaya smiled at the pleased sound Naruto made as he took his first bite of the food that she made. Yes, they had been together for about a week now, though they rarely had any time to spend together to enjoy their meals together. Though Kagaya frowned as she felt a presence outside the apartment. Judging by the high chakra levels, it was easily one of the Anbu security details for the Hokage. I know you're waiting at the door, if you're gonna come in, come in. She called out over the shoulder in mild annoyance that their good and romantic atmosphere had been broken by Naruto's duties. The Anbu didn't bother knocking since he was hailed into the apartment and went straight to where the voice came from. Hokage-sama, Kagaya-san, I'm sorry for the intrusion, but the civilian council is asking for your presence in the Hokage's office. He said, trying to keep any emotion out of his voice. Because though they were just speculation and rumors, the word around the training yard was that Kagaya was the perpetrator behind the Tsuki no Mai. For, though they wouldn't dare speak badly about the Hokage's wife, especially since it was mere speculation and only the Hokage and his team knew what truly happened after they all fell under the genjutsu, as this was still a dictatorship, and he could have them executed if he so wished. The civilian council and his council was merely for show. Naruto let out a mild sound of annoyance as he adjusted the covers on the blanket to make sure he was decent before he looked at the Anbu operative. I will be there in a bit, please tell the civilian council that they cannot demand my presence at any point in time just because they want to. He said with slight annoyance as he continued to eat his food. He glanced at the position of the sun outside the window and face faulted. What could they possibly want at 6 a.m.? He asked curiously and in mild annoyance. The Anbu didn't respond for a moment as he figured out how he should broach the subject before deciding to just rip the band-aid off. They want to know when the next Cage Summit will be. Because after the fight with Madara and Obito it has brought peace to the forefront of everyone's minds. As they realized all their petty squabbles in the past have amounted to nothing. They're mostly just happy that they still have their free will thanks to you and the new Densetsu no Sanin. 5. He said honestly as he saluted Naruto before disappearing in a swirl of leaves, leaving the two lovebirds in peace once again. Kagaya raised a curious eyebrow to what the Anbu said about Naruto and his team, though when she thought about it. As far as the Anbu knew, they had defeated Madara in fair combat. While it was better that it stayed that way, Kagaya knew all too well what happened when the people found an enemy to rally behind. Sounds fairly mundane, it sounds like they just want to give you their thanks in person since you've been sending a clone to work every day. She mused with a small giggle at his easy way to get out of the job. It wasn't like he was skipping out on being their leader. Once the clone poofed, Naruto still got all the memories from the clone, so it was just as good as him being there. Though Kagaya's eyebrows furrowed a bit as she thought about this. Naruto had told her it was his dream to be Hokage, so it finally clicked in her head that it was a bit odd he was here all the time. Naruto, be completely honest with me, I believe you when you say that you have feelings for me. I can read chakra flows to detect if someone is lying or not. Though are you here with me because you want to be? Or that you feel like you need to be? She asked honestly with a bit of edge to her tone as this was a sensitive topic. Naruto was caught off guard by the question but he had figured it was coming at some point due to their unusual marriage. Though deciding to be tactful for once in his life, he simply nodded for speaking. At first I was just doing it because I felt I had to, because I'm one of only 3 people who could even hope of standing toe to toe with you if you ever decided to keep up with the attack. He admitted honestly, pausing for a moment as he gave her hand a gentle but firm squeeze as he held her gaze. Though as I've gotten to know you more and more, I just want to be around you, to learn more about you. You're an untapped wealth of knowledge from an era that has barely any surviving records of. There is so much I could learn from you. He continued as he took a moment to catch his breath before restarting. I want to be around you Kagaya-chan, not only to learn from you but because you know I have feelings for you. That en. He trails off with a bright red blush. Kagaya could infer what Naruto was trying to say, though she wanted to tease him a bit, just because she could. What was that, Naruto? I missed part of that. She teased lightly with a playful grin on her face. This caused Naruto to blush an even deeper shade of red, to the point metaphorical steam was coming out of his ears. You can tell me anything, Naruto, I've heard you sleep talking before. I'm sure it couldn't be any more embarrassing than that, she said, distracting him from his previous embarrassment. Naruto was curious as to what she had heard while he was sleeping, though it wasn't the time for that. He stuck his tongue out at her teasing before he gathered up the mental energy to repeat what he trailed off with. Though as soon as he was about to speak, Kagaya began poking his side gently while asking him what he said in a teasing tone. He could tell it was playful banter. Though he tried his best not to smile as she did it, turning his head so she couldn't see his smile. I'd stop poking me if I were you, he warned playfully, turning back to her, not hiding his smile this time. Though she kept poking his sides until he finally decided enough was enough, with speed that would even give Sharingan a run for its money. Naruto gently grabbed both of her hands, spinning her around and gently pulling her arms across her chest, pinning them down lightly to her side. Ha ha, I won, Naruto exclaimed lightly with his signature foxish grin on his face. Kagaya was caught a bit off guard by how fast he had disarmed her, though she was flexible, pushing her arms and his arms above their heads. She flipped over him and put him in the same position that he had just put her in. No, I win, she exclaimed lightly with a giggle, though Naruto surprised her yet again. He quickly powered out of her grip, gently grabbing her wrists as he spun around and pinned her down to the bed with her hands above her head. Well, that backfired quickly, she trailed jokingly as she tried to sit up to continue their play fight, flailing her legs cutely as Naruto straddled her waist to make sure he held her down. Shouldn't I be the one riding you? She asked in a sly tone, biting her bottom lip in an attempt to distract him from his grip on her wrists. It worked, but only for a moment, though that was all that Kagaya needed. Soon Naruto felt her hands on his sides. Then all of a sudden he was on his back instead of her being on her back. Well then, not many people can beat me in a wrestling match, he mused with a chuckle as he got his breathing back under control after their play wrestling match. Though as much as I'd like to continue our fun little game, I'm needed in my office as I haven't sent a clone yet, and it's occasionally nice of me if I show up, he said honestly, feeling a bit bad as this caused Kagaya to lightly pout, though she still got off of Naruto. Kagaya playfully glared at the blonde and said with a half-teasing, half-serious tone to her voice, "You better bring me some flowers on the way home," she lightly exclaimed as Naruto got out of the bed and started getting dressed. Grabbing his Rokudaime Hokage cloak and hat, Kagaya had to admit he looked damn good in it. Naruto let out a light chuckle before coming back over to the bed for one last affectionate kiss before he left. Tell you what, if you bring me lunch, then we'll go out and pick you flowers together, he said honestly as he put the hat on. Though before giving Kagaya a chance to respond, he disappeared in a swirl of leaves to his office, making it all but assured that Kagaya would come rescue him from the hell that is paperwork.